to The Writer's Dream. This is a show where writers can talk about how they write their books, how they publish their books, and how they market their books. Please visit us on Facebook, The Writer's Dream, to ask questions and make comments. Our guest today is Charlene Knadle. She is the author of Paper Lovers, and she is also a playwright of The Last Meal. So which would you like to start with, the book or the play?
Oh, let me get the play out of the way. It's such a minor part of what I do, but it came kind of as a surprise to me when, first of all, Writer's Digest contest gave it an award, and I then had the nerve to send it out to the minstrel players who'd put a notice in the paper saying that they wanted one-act plays for their very first one-act play festival. And even though they looked at 47 plays, mine was one that they chose, one of 7 that they chose to use in their festival. And so I've only written 3 plays, 3 one-act plays. One of them was imagining the parents of Edward Albee, would you believe? And writing from their perspective. I wrote about this husband and wife who's...
What did Edward Albee write, just for our viewers?
3 Tall Women. The Zoo Story is probably his most well-known by most people. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I sent the play to Edward Albee and asked him if he would mind if I market this. And he wrote back in his very heavy ink handwriting and said, please do not send this out for publication. I like your writing very much, but I don't like the parents you chose for me.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So I'm not doing anything with it.
And you framed it,
but of course I'm saying, no, I tend to not frame. I mean, I was even nominated for a pushcart prize, and that's not framed on my wall either.
Okay, let me back up for a minute.
Yeah.
Writer's Digest. Tell us about the Writer's Digest contest that you entered.
Just simply a list of things that they offer prizes for, whether it's poetry, short stories, essays. It's a big factory of those kinds of things, and one-act plays were one of the categories, and I thought, why not? This is just sitting here in my archives, and I'll just send that out.
And of the contests that you can enter, Writer's Digest is pretty, amongst writers, pretty prestigious.
It's huge. I'm sure they get thousands of entries in some categories, hundreds in others, but I don't think they ever have small numbers.
No, I don't think so either. And minstrel players, who are the minstrel players?
I had never heard of them, but they've been operating. The word came to me as extant. I have to read these words out. On Long Island. I think they were operating mostly in the Center Reach, Selden area, but they decided to go to Northport, and at that point, that was where their chosen venue for the one-act play festival. So that's where mine was performed.
And that was this summer?
That was this past summer, yes, just a few months ago.
And I read the review in the paper. Would you like to talk about that? I think you would.
The Smithtown Messenger?
Yes.
Yes, I was amazed that the one person who came to a dress rehearsal to evaluate the plays and write a review chose my play as the best of the 7, and one of the actors in my play as one of the 3 best actors. I was very excited about that. I particularly liked the people who performed my play.
So tell me about, what's the story behind The Last Meal? It's not like The Last Supper, right?
It's not like The Last Supper, but it is set in a prison kitchen.
Okay.
And the prisoner himself never appears on stage. It's all about him and philosophical talk about the situation. And there's reference to a mob of people outside demonstrating because he is due to be executed, and this mob knows him or considers him to be innocent. And The Last Meal comes into play because he refuses his last meal. And this is part of the discussion. Part of, the 3 characters who are on stage, their curiosity and their confrontation about it with each other. They think differently philosophically about some of these things.
So I saw a picture of you in the Smithtown Messenger, kind of directing. So did you direct
I wasn't,
as
no,
well?
I did not. No, I was at this dress rehearsal, and the photographer who came along with the reporter asked me, since I was there, to come up and stand. And I wish I had known that I would be in the picture. I'd have dressed a little differently.
We always say that. Now you know why famous people have hair people and makeup people travel
Oh my
with them
gosh,
constantly.
it would have been really nice if that had been the case.
So
yes.
you had a director?
Yes, Ray Palin directed my play, and he's one of the two founders of the Minstrel Players acting troupe.
So would you do it again? Write a play?
I
Produce it?
might. You know, it was a very enjoyable experience, I have to say.
Can I
Yes.
ask you, and you can not answer this if you want, did it cost you money to put this on, or did they do this? Did the Minstrel Players
no.
just take the project and
No,
incur the cost themselves?
whatever cost it cost them, they didn't involve me in. Although I did buy a chair, which
Okay.
I had an option to do for the theater. It was totally a volunteer thing.
Okay. Okay, so tell us about your novel, Your Paper Lovers.
This book is set in Manhattan. One setting is a very tiny hotel, which is obviously old or it wouldn't be tiny, where a group of women live with a man who kidnaps the main character of this book and takes her there. And there has been a peaceful coexistence, a very calm working group with this man and the other women, but our main character does not want to be there. She's the only one who doesn't want to be there, and she's of course not allowed to leave. It's a strange situation. A lot of the peaceful coexistence is totally disrupted by her presence. She is looking for all kinds of ways that she can try for escape. None of them works up to a certain point, but there comes a time when she actually does get out and on her own steam. And then there is a trial, and then there's another third of the book.
So in other words, when she gets out, she reports that the man kidnapped her, and he's arrested, and there's a trial?
That's right, that's right.
Okay.
And a lot of revelations happen at the trial, a lot of surprises. We learn about the other women, things that didn't already get learned in the process of their interaction in the hotel. And the hotel, by the way, is owned by a rock star, and there's that story too. But the trial has shocking moments in it, and later on then there are calm quotidian domestic scenes, and there are entertainments, and there are some truly tragic and astonishing things that happen. The ending surprises absolutely everyone, but on reflection seems almost inevitable.
Well, they say that you're supposed to, you're not supposed to come up with anything that someone who was really paying attention to your book couldn't figure out by reading it.
Well, perhaps so, yes. I think people do get caught up in it and don't worry about trying to figure out things. I mean, this is a combination mystery, suspense, and romance.
I was going to ask you that, what genre
And I did
would you
that
put
on
it in?
purpose. I like the idea of mixing those genres as opposed to going by somebody's pattern. I wanted more depth and more dimension than one gets from any one of those three on its own. And I think I achieved that. But people do kind of get lost in the book, in the reading, and they're not thinking cognitively, how was this put together? They're not thinking like that. Well, perhaps they do later on. I mean,
I
there's...
do because I write mysteries.
Right. Well, there's been more than one person who is reading it repeat times. One woman is reading it for the third time and says she sees something different every time. I know her husband. I don't know her. And he tells me what she tells him. And one of the tellers at the bank I use is reading it for the second time. You know, that's all I know in terms of people reading it repeatedly, but there's been a lot of feedback. One woman that I have no knowledge of who wrote a review on Amazon said, I've read a lot of books in my life, but I've never read a book like this. And I take that as high praise.
Sure, absolutely. It's unique. What motivates you to write?
Oh, well, writing is an expression mode that comes natural to me, I think. I like to write because it's a way to share my considered thoughts, those that take time to come to. I've had a lot of personal essays published in magazines and newspapers, and including the New York Times and Newsday. So when I first started writing, that's what I did mainly, and then I started writing short stories and got some of those published, and now finally a novel. But the fun of talking to people and telling stories, maybe I have a little bit of wittiness off the cuff, but it's rare. And I mean, your friend outside, Joe, inspires it.
Yes, our
But,
cameraman, Joe Satriano.
Yes. It's my most natural way of expressing myself.
And you're actually Dr. Knadle.
Yes, I have a doctorate from St. John's University, which I got in 1998.
Wow, that's very recent.
Not too.
And what, the doctorate's in English?
In English, yes. Yeah. And I teach at Suffolk Community College, right? So, that's part of the other side of my life, or one other side of my life.
So the academician and the artist. Tell me about the difference between writing a novel and writing a play.
There are some basic similarities. One person who congratulated me on getting the play accepted was writing a screenplay, and I was taking a screenplay course, which I haven't tried yet, but might in the future. And I said, well, and I really believe this, writing a play just proves I can do dialogue. And there's a lot of dialogue in a novel, to answer your question. There's a huge connection.
And the reason I asked you the question is because I write young adult mysteries, and actually I'm not a trained writer. Unlike you, my background's in science, and when I started writing, I took a writing course. People who watch the show have heard this story many times, but I do see this story like a movie. I'm writing and I'm seeing it in my mind like a movie, and I'm thinking of converting the books to screenplays and trying to sell them as serialized TV programs or movies because I see them that way.
Yes.
And so dialogue comes very naturally to me, and I have friends who, like you, are English majors, and they're very good expository writers, but dialogue drives them crazy.
Well,
and I say, but it's just people talking.
If you are in an MFA program, Master of Fine Arts in Writing, which I've never done, and I would love to, but going back into an academic program doesn't seem like the wisest move for me at this point. But if I were in that, instead of the kind of traditional doctoral program that I did go through, then I would be writing creatively in the MFA program. But in a traditional program, one learns to criticize. We write a lot of papers in the doctoral program. We read a lot. We say what we think. We find something, hopefully, that nobody else has said. We read the critics that have already published and try to best them or fill in the gaps. that's not the kind of training for creative writing. But I find that when I'm teaching literature, which I do, I teach literature and writing, and when in my literature classes, I don't just ask my students to criticize or teach them how to criticize. I may ask them to talk about what they think or to write what they think, but I want them to experience writing a few things creatively as well. And I do that on purpose to bring in that other side, to fill that gap. And I do that with the writing classes, of course,
And
too.
you also are the founder of the Dix Hills Writers Group.
Yes, yes.
And is that to kind of just, meet with people who are kindred spirits, so to speak?
I enjoy being with other writers, and that's one way to do it. I founded it because I taught a creative writing course at my local high school, Half Hollow Hills High School East, and when it was over, I was a little frustrated. I wanted to continue not doing that, but I asked some people if they'd like to come to my house and just, share each other's work and comment on it, and it got started that way. Now it no longer meets at my house. It has met in different homes, and now a neighborhood home, which is wonderful, to have a comfortable place to go to meet. And the group has changed over time. Several people have written novels out of the group. Some write poetry. Even though I'm a member of a poetry group, is also the Long Island Poetry Collective, which meets in the library on Main Street in Huntington once a week. Those people don't come to the other group, and the ones who write poetry in the Dix Hills Writing Group don't want to go to the poetry group. It's interesting.
Yes.
They're like these two homes, which are different from each other.
Well, you are definitely a great supporter of writing on Long Island, I would say.
I do as much support as I can. I read the novels that are written by my friends, and I know some things to bring in to a discussion that perhaps the others haven't really any knowledge of, and I like sharing. So.
I had a discussion with somebody, I can't remember who now, best that I don't mention names anyway, and I was talking about the fact that I thought that of all of the fine arts, writing is the most difficult because you're working with nothing. If you're a sculptor, you have clay. If you're a painter, you have paint, and so on down the line. And if you're a writer, you work with the synapses in your brain.
Yes, well, I think writers have a full interior life, and that's there to be drawn on. And there are so many triggers for that. For instance, this book was triggered by a simple dream. I woke up one morning having been gripped by a particular scene in a dream, and it stayed with me. And in the book, it's 1/2 page, totally insignificant, but it's the seed for the whole book.
Well, that's this absolutely the same thing happened with my books. It was one tiny little memory that I had, and it just grows, all those little synapses. Yes, you do. When I said nothing, I didn't.
Right,
I didn't
and you
mean-
mentioned artists. I think imagery is extremely important, not only for artists, but also for writers.
Oh, definitely.
As you said before, when you can picture something in your mind, like a movie, if you're just, sometimes when you're writing, it's just a matter of depicting the movie. I won't say describing or telling, because it's not just narrative. It's what the characters said, and with some restriction, what they're feeling. And sometimes, you look at an advertisement in a magazine, beautiful picture, odd picture. If you ignore the words, you can create a story right there. Or some people will ride the subway and look at an interesting looking person on the subway and have already a scenario going about that person's life. And for some people, that's fairly automatic. And you can, in my classes, I'll sometimes hand out a group of pictures Xerox, interesting faces. Have all of the students, this is in a writing class, all of the students look at one particular one. What's the sound of that person's voice? What does this person do as an occupation? What does this person have for breakfast? What problem does this person have in life? What justification does that person have about his side of it? How would he tell someone that he's innocent in this controversy? And then they have to write a monologue for his telling of his innocence.
That's a great exercise.
Yeah, it's just one of several little tricks that I use to get people both writing and using their imaginations.
So basically, when you say that writers have a full inner life, what
Yes.
you're saying is the material is your memories, your impressions, your view
We
of the world.
all have
your
stored information
information.
in the unconscious, and it's an ocean of material. We don't even have consciousness that it's there, but we draw on it in a kind of mixed way. It's a mixture, it's a soup.
It certainly is.
And we draw on it when we're writing.
That's true.
Yes, and
That's true.
of course we can do the other thing too. We can have an experience, and we're very conscious of that experience, and we can write our personal essay version of what happened and what we learned from it, or what we concluded out of it, or what wisdom we gained because of it, and that too can be done. I mean, we can choose the way we write. You know,
That's true. What's the richest thing for you? Is it the ability to teach and share and more or less share with other writers, or is it actually the production of
I'm
a
here
product?
as a writer, and what was the richest thing, and is the richest thing for me in writing fiction, is living someone else's life, being in their psyche, being in their head, having their feelings. You know, this is a strange story in a way, and it has nothing to do with anything I've ever lived. It's totally a work of the imagination. And even though I use first person for my format and for my approach to writing and for my main character's telling of the story, or living of the story through, we're seeing it in her eyes as she lives it. Because I do that, an occasional person, a former student of mine, read the book and said, "I can't help but see you there. You know, I think of you as being this character, but I'm not this character." And it's sort of like, I mean, I'm trying to keep myself out as much as I can.
It's very hard to do, because my character's a teenage girl, and people say, "Is that you?" Because people who know me, and I say, "It's the teenager
It's a common problem.
I would have loved to have been."
Right. But you know, absenting yourself as a writer is a trick that is so valuable.
I can
Shakespeare
imagine, yeah.
used it for everything, every play he wrote. It's one of the great greatnesses of his writing. He didn't do it in his poetry. If you want to get to know Shakespeare,
Yeah, it's
read
just
his
poetry.
poems.
Yes.
Because you feel the man, you hear the man, you know who he is, you get a sense of his life. You can tell whether you would like him or not. And I would like one side of him, but not a couple of others. I mean, he was a chatterbox. You know, I would like a little quiet now and then, thank you.
Most
But in the
I'm
plays, he's absent.
Yeah, because they're stories.
And that's what makes the play
is
so
that,
great.
Is that really the essence of poetry, though, is that you're getting out your feelings about, you know, in a particular form?
You know, poetry as a mode, I also write. What
Yeah, I
happened
know.
for me is that I hadn't written poetry in any real serious way until I started working for the doctorate. And at that point, you know, I wasn't writing the long essays, the short stories. I wasn't writing any nonfiction things, but these thoughts would come to me. And on the long drive to
Thank God for those long drives.
Exit 25, I would write little snippets of phrases and sentences on a pad that I had beside me on the seat. And out of that came poetry. But I think poetry is very valuable for a writer of anything, because it teaches you not to repeat yourself. It teaches you economy of words. It teaches you to have a certain rhythm to your work. And I once won a sonnet contest. I won first prize. And, you know, that's a definite rhythm and a definite rhyme pattern. And I wrote 5, and then I knew I didn't have a good one. And my daughter walked by, and I said, Julie, give me a word, just one word. This is another technique I use sometimes to get myself going on something. And she said, bag. I wrote a sonnet starting with the word bag. I mean, that's not the first word, but, you know, it's in the first line, and it won first prize. The first line is, if I could bag my troubles for the trash, and then it goes from there.
That's wonderful.
You know, and
We only have another maybe minute left. Could you tell me what the most challenging part of your writing was?
finding the time. When you're a teacher and you're grading papers and you're thinking up assignments and you're doing reading for teaching, that pretty well takes up a good deal of your time. And then, of course, I like to garden. Thank goodness, it gives me a little exercise. I also like to cook, so we always have a good dinner. I don't, you know, so it's not as though I'm one-dimensional. I have these other things, and it does cause me to fight for time.
I find
that's the biggest
time
challenge.
the most difficult as well.
Right, I can imagine, sure.
And what was the most enjoyable?
Well, like I say, living the other characters' lives. And, you know, I do, in this book and in the book that I'm currently writing, what Shakespeare does. Even the minor characters, I'm thinking like they would think, you know, each one of them separately, differently. So that is a fun part.
It is the fun part.
We
The
don't like to have
imagination
just
part.
one life to live.
No, that's true. That's true. I'd like to be about 6 different people.
Yes.
Then maybe I could accomplish everything I wanted to. Charlene, it was an honor.
Thank you.
Good luck.
I enjoyed it, Linda.
Good.